Thank you very much. I would like to say buona siesta. The technical terms in the title of my presentations are partly hard theological technical terms and partly sociological or political, we can say. The starting point is my main research interest is since 1 or 2 or 3 decades already to establish an interpretative framework for the transformation of Central and Eastern Europe. So I am dealing only with this region of the globe. All other regions are too far for me. And I was, since my quite long scientific career, always provocated, and I was always satisfied with many other colleagues in Hungary and in the other countries of this Central and Eastern European region, that all of the processes in our countries were interpreted by theoretical frameworks which was originally elaborated in a totally different societal and cultural and historical circumstances, for instance in Western Europe or in the United States. And many of us, included myself, we felt us like Charlie Chaplin, wrong dressed by these excellent theories. So not only me, but perhaps I am one of the main provocator or animator of the task to elaborate a really appropriate understanding, to elaborate something like a regional theory, something as a special focus, something as a special lens, which is coined by the special or particular historical and contemporary experiences of our regions. As, for example, the theory of modernization was inspired through the, we can say, Western European or North Atlantic hemispheres impressions and experiences. No, we have different kind of historical and contemporary experience. So the entire endeavor I am dealing with is to find out a special point of view. And in the center of my understanding is the fact that all of the countries of this region, it includes the Baltic countries, the Central and Eastern European countries or societies, and as well the Balkan societies. So this region, for our Polish colleague, the Medjugorje region, is, according to my understanding, first of all, defined by a special geopolitical and geocultural status of in-betweenness, between 2 or 3 hegemonies happened the history of all these societies, countries, states, and it is a longue durée fact, not only a fact from the 20th century, but perhaps we can go back till the dividing of the Roman Empire, perhaps. So this betweenness is crucial for the understanding, for an appropriate understanding. And as you can see, I use the word, the term wounds. You know, perhaps wound is the translation of the Greek term trauma. So, okay, but only in bracket. But I don't use trauma, because trauma is used mostly for personal, psychological problems. And I am not interested in individuals. I am interested in societal transformations. So, and I elaborated 5 wounds, more or less as Jesus Christ has 5 wounds. And the ID card of Jesus, the reason, are the wounds, you know. That is his ID card, and perhaps the entire Christianity could have a better status in the contemporary world if we would like to have the most important ID, our wounds, and not our interests. So, the 5 most important wounds, they are something as categories, but they are all present in all societies of the region. Okay, in different ways, or in different understanding, with different faces, but these 5 wounds are present. You can see that is the occupation by hegemonies, different hegemonies. That is one of the consequences of this occupation is the prohibition of using different national rights and minority rights and language rights, and then they are the tradition of violent deportation, and as well something we can call the forced, the state power forced social mobilization. So always the new power established a new elite, and the old elite was put in the prisons, to be simple. So, and then the persecution of religion and all dissidents and the churches. It is the 4th wounds. First of all, of course, in the communist time, but not only in the communist time, in the fascist time as well, and concerning religious minorities during the entire history of these all countries. And then the most huge or the most dramatic wounds are the genocides and other types of mass killings. So if we would like to highlight the most important characteristics or markers of our region, the parallel existence of all these wounds is the main marker of the region. Based on these facts, I call then the collective identity of the entire region as wounded collective identity. And I hope, or I am trying to demonstrate it through different researches and different collegial discussions, as we have now here, to demonstrate that this approach is more appropriate and brings more fruits for an original understanding. I don't want to argue against the validity of, for example, theory of modernization or other kind of theories, born in other cultural and social circumstances, I am not against, but I observe something as a lack of the well-dressing possibility. And I hope I can fulfill this lack with this theory of wounded collective identity. Okay, back to the main thesis or main argument. I say that the region is wounded, the collective identity of the region is wounded, and of course, if they are wounds, we need healing. We need healing processes. And here we could stop a little bit to think about what means healing for a society. To be simple, I would like to answer with Robert Bellah. The healing means to have a perspective for a good society. Good society. What good society means, I can here not explain, but I mentioned a very interesting and important book of this famous and really important American sociologist, Robert Bellah. Okay, good society. The perspective of good society is the perspective of healing of the entire region. But to be no more ill, to be no more plagued with these wounds, it needs different healing processes. And one of these healing processes, perhaps one of the most important, is the healing or clearing the memory. Because the characteristic of the region is we are a little bit too much backwarded. And the historical traumata plays an over-average role in the understanding of the contemporary circumstances of our societies. So, and therefore, of course, the so-called historical mourning process could be very interesting, very important for our societies. And if we think on the very hateful discussions in our societies, I understand these discussions as an inherent part of this memory work, of this mourning process, as Sigmund Freud or Helena Kast elaborated it. But today I would like not to speak deeper about this historical mourning process, but I would like to speak about something which is for me as well very new. And so I beg for your critics and remarks to bring me forward. And it is not as empty politeness, because the author of these important books is sitting among us. It is not only a Central European kindness, or not first of all, but I was deeply provoked to rethink my theology regarding the Eucharist by the books of Dr. Kavanaugh. Because he elaborated, first of all, in this Torture and Eucharist book, long time ago, how a rethinking about the Eucharist, which is a most important core element of the Christian, more on the Catholic and Orthodox world, how a theological rethinking and deepening and radicalizing of the faith of the Eucharist can bring the church in another thinking and behavior, political behavior. It is crucial to make Eucharist most important sacrament in the Catholic Church after baptism, to bring this logic, to open this logic from the prison of piety, and to bring it or to use it as a functional logic for a political and societal and cultural behavior. This turn is, if I understand you well, in the center of this first book, and more or less more focused on one type of consequence in this second mentioned one. So today I try first in my entire life, I try to elaborate the same, but not dealing theologically with the Eucharist, but dealing theology with penance. So if Eucharist is embodied in politics, then I would like to see for Central and Eastern Europe penance embodied in the wounded world, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. So, forgiveness belongs to the process of penance. The aim is to be able to forgive. My short argument is that only through forgiveness is a constructive living together possible in our societies and between our societies. We can make excellent diplomacy, and we can make peace through different political affairs, but in the deepest level of humanity and of society, we should make something with the sins, with the feeling of sins which was made against us, and which has a huge impact for our private and as well for our common identity. So without forgiveness, there is not a solidar society possible. And if the church, if the Catholic, the Protestant churches, all Christian churches, if they will be more and more aware what means, not only in the piety, but as well in a political field, what means forgiveness, what means this perspective of forgiveness, then they will found once again their original function and role for their inherent central mission. And all of us, we know that the churches in our societies, in the entire region, are not always sure what they have to search in the modern society. Yes, so if they want to renew their original Christian self-understanding and mission, then they should focus on penance, on forgiveness. These will then strengthening the capacity of compassion with other people and as well the cooperation with other people, with other groups inside of the society, which are all in these countries very divided, deeply divided societies. So perhaps Hungary is the best in this case as well, but Poland is as well on the Dobogu. So, okay, now I would like to highlight three different elements of this forgiveness, a little bit more concrete, to go more concrete into the historical and contemporary particularities of our region. So, the critics in our societies is characterized by a one-sided accusation. One-sided accusation means it is something as a victim play, that only the other part which harmed us can be criticized. Self-critique is weakness. We can understand why self-critique is so dangerous in our countries, because in all former decades and perhaps centuries, churches felt themselves threatened. And they thought that it is a catastrophe to bring our inner problems to the outside, because it helps our enemies to harm us more. And therefore, critics, self-critics, were naturally forbidden or taken as a dangerous endeavor. Confess is weakness. And of course, we know as well in the private psychological researches that it is not so easy to say, I was wrong, because it makes the person labile. It makes the person uncertain. The so-called ontological security in a private and in the collective level is then threatened by a self-critique. So people need more or less a very hard and very clear meaning about the reason of self-critique. And if we take the Christian point of view, self-critique is possible by a deep belonging that God accepts us, although we are sinners. So the Christian model of self-critique is based on this deep faith that God is the God of mercy. It is as well in Islam the same. Bismillah, we know. So the second point is that to have a self-critique and to have a correct critique against other people, it is very important to concentrate to the well-based fact taken from research, because in the public discussion we hear permanently artifactual understanding of the past. The memory is always creative and always is deeply impacted by the contemporary interests. So, and therefore, if different political forces are speaking about the past, it is not the past as details or as reality, but it is a past we create it in interest to strengthen our position today in the circumstances in our own society. So the artifact-based communication should be criticized first of all. And here, let me give another link to the core elements of the Christian faith, which is God is the God of creation. So God is for the real reality interested, and not as interested in a pseudo reality. So Christians can have a renewed faith by a deep, or perhaps by a mystical deep understanding how God is for the reality of creation interested, and how He will be with us, although we are sinners in a private and in a societal level as well. We can say the entire Jewish history in the Bible, so-called Old Testament, in Tanakh, demonstrates these faith, these beloved. So, and the third and last one would be, which I want to highlight, that, as I mentioned, the process of forgiveness and penance is a process which makes, for a while at least, people and communities unstable. And therefore, for a successful process of forgiveness and penance, we need ritual, secure places, as in the liturgy of the Roman Catholic, the Western Christian liturgy, and as well Eastern Christian liturgy. It is a very safe place if you go to the chair. And then, but as well the cultural anthropological researches demonstrate that the deep transformation of societies needs a special time, needs a special place always, and needs special rules, and all them in a saved circumstances, because it is very dangerous, existentially dangerous, to say I was wrong, or perhaps to say I was permanently wrong. My decisions have had a false logic. It is quite hard, and we cannot count that people will be able to make a self-critic if they not have a safe place to do that. So, to end, thank you, which is written on red, forgiveness is the strength of the weak. Societies in our region think we are weak societies, but it is not. It is the strength of the weak and not the weakness of the strength of the strong. So, thank you for understanding, and I need critics.